Topics. Each of these topics forms a separate branch from which you can generate further, more detailed sub-branches. As you proceed down the sub-branches, more ideas are generated and recorded. These can then be examined and a number selected and combined to provide a research idea. This technique is discussed in more detail in section 3.5 and illustrated in box 3.6. 38. Generating research ideas. Brainstorming. The technique of brainstorming, box 2.4, taught as a problem-solving technique on many business and management courses, can also be used to generate and refine research ideas. Ideas. It is best undertaken with a group of people. Critically reviewing the literature. Learning outcomes. By the end of this chapter you should be able to understand what is meant by being critical when reviewing the literature, recognize the purpose of the critical literature review and its different forms, discuss the content of a critical literature review and possible ways to structure it, identify the types of literature available, plan your literature search strategy and undertake searches using a variety of databases, evaluate the relevance, value, and sufficiency of potentially relevant literature, reference the literature accurately, outline the process of systematic review, draft a critical literature review, understand why you must acknowledge others' work or ideas and avoid plagiarism, apply the knowledge, skills, and understanding gained to your own research project. 3.1. 72. Introduction. As part of your studies you have almost certainly been asked by your tutors to review the literature, produce a literature review or critically review the literature on a given topic. You may, like many students, have grown to fear the literature review. This is not because of the process of searching for and obtaining and reading the literature. It is because of the requirement both to make reasoned judgments about the value of each piece of work and to summarize and synthesis as you organize those ideas and findings that are value into a written product. Chapter 3. Critically reviewing the literature. Learning outcomes. By the end of this chapter, understand what is meant. 3.1. As part of your studies you have. Chapter 3. Critically reviewing the literature. By the end of this chapter you understand what. 3.1. Introduction. As part of your studies you known as the critical literature review. It is this process of obtaining and synthesizing previous research, making reasoned judgments and organizing your thoughts into a written review, that many find difficult and time-consuming. There are 3 ways in which you are likely to use literature in your research project. Creswell and Poss 2017. As the preliminary search that helps you to generate and refine your research ideas and draft your research proposal, sections 2.3 and 2.5, to provide the context and theoretical framework for your research, the focus of this chapter, to place your research findings within the wider body of knowledge and form part of your discussion chapter, section 14.3. Most research textbooks, as well as your project tutor, will argue that a critical review of the literature is necessary. Although you may feel that you already have a reasonable knowledge of your research area, we believe that the process of critically reviewing and writing this review is essential. Project assessment criteria usually require you to demonstrate awareness of the current state of knowledge in your subject, its limitations and how your research fits in this wider context. As Cinder, 2019, 333, notes, building your research on and relating it to existing knowledge is the building block of all academic research activities, regardless of discipline. This means you have to bring together and discuss what has been published and is relevant to your research topic critically. The significance of your research and what you find out will inevitably be judged in relation to other people's research and their findings. Your written review needs to be structured and written to show you understand your field and its key theories, concepts, and ideas, as well as the major issues and debates about your topic. Denier and Transfield 2009.
2009. You therefore need to show you have established what relevant research has been published in your chosen area, and, if possible, identified any other research that might currently be in progress.
Although the literature you read as part of the reviewing process will enhance your subject knowledge and help you to clarify your research questions further, only that which is relevant to your research will be included in your finished critical review. Unlike some academic disciplines, business and management research makes use of a wide range of literature. While your review is likely to include specific business disciplines such as accounting, finance, operations, strategy, marketing, and human resource management, it is also likely to include other disciplines such as economics, psychology, sociology, education, and geography. Given this and the importance of the review to your research, it is vital for you to be aware of what a critical literature review is and the range of literature available before you start the reviewing process. We therefore start this chapter by outlining what is meant by being critical and the various purposes and forms a critical review of the literature can have. Section 3.2. Subsequently, we consider the structure of the literature review. Section 3.3. Once you have a good knowledge of the literature sources available, Section 3.4, you can start the process by planning your literature search. Section 3.5, and conducting your search. Section 3.6. Potentially relevant literature obtained can then be read and evaluated. Section 3.7. 73. Chapter 3, critically reviewing the literature. The critical review is more key in an online retailer's e-ages. Students often have difficulties writing their literature reviews for their research projects. Mark summarizes these. So what happens sometimes is, a student comes to see me having obviously done a great deal of work. The student has usually already emailed me what they say is the finished critical literature review. Yet the purpose of their review is unclear. It is little more than a summary of the Andre_Popov/Shutterstock articles and books read, each article or book being given 1 or 2 paragraphs. Some students arrange these paragraphs alphabetically in author order, others arrange them in chronological order. None link or juxtapose the ideas. Their literature reviews often look more like an online retailer's web pages than a critical review. UST like the items on these pages, each article or book has some similarities in terms of subject matter and so are grouped together. Unlike the retailer's web pages, the reasons for these groupings are not made explicit. In addition, while it makes sense to provide similar length summary descriptions of items on the retailer's web pages to help the prospective purchaser come to a decision about whether or not to purchase, this is not the case in a literature review. Or each article or book in a literature review, the amount written should reflect its value to the research project. Mark concludes. While such an approach obviously makes good sense for online retailers and prospective purchasers, it does not work for the critical review of the literature. We obviously need to explain better what we mean by a critical review of the literature to our students. Those which are relevant being noted and referenced. Section 3.8. Alternatively, you may decide that rather than undertaking a traditional literature review, yours will be a self-contained research project to explore a clearly defined research question. In such situations, particularly where questions are derived from organizational practice or policy problems, business and management researchers often adopt the systematic review methodology to critically review the literature. We discuss this in more detail in Section 3.9. You are then ready to start drafting your review. Section 3.10, fully acknowledging your sources and avoiding plagiarism. Section 3.11. For most research projects, critically reviewing the literature will be an early activity. Despite this early start, it is usually necessary to continue refining your review throughout your project's life. The process can be likened to an upward spiral, culminating in the finished product, a written critical literature review of the literature. Figure 3.1. 74. E in critical and TEUR authors and forms of Re-IE. 75. E in critical and TEUR authors and forms of Re-IE. Your critical literature review should be a constructively critical analysis that develops a clear argument about what the published literature indicates is known and not known about your research question. Wallace and Ray 2016. This means, as highlighted in the opening vignette, your literature review is not just a series of paragraphs, each describing and summarizing a book or journal article. Rather, you will need to assess what is significant to your research and on this basis, decide whether or not to include it. If you think. 3.2. Figure 3.1 The literature review process. Finalize critical review of the literature. Generate and re-search terms. Update search re-search parameters. Record. Evaluate. Obtain literature update and revise draft. Update search. Obtain literature. Generate and re-search terms. Record. Evaluate. Revise search parameters. Conduct search. Obtain literature. Evaluate. Record. Generate search terms. Start drafting review. The NE search parameters. Research questions and objectives. Chapter 3 critically reviewing the literature. The concepts, theories, arguments, or empirical research findings reported and discussed in an article are unclear, biased, or inconsistent with other work and need to be researched further. You will need to state this and justify why. This is not easy and requires careful thought. However, by doing this you will be able to produce a reasonably detailed, analytical, constructively critical analysis of the key literature that relates to your research question. Within this you will need to discuss both theories and research findings that support and oppose your ideas. Being critical. Within your degree program, you have probably already been asked to take a critical approach for previous assignments. However, it is worth considering what we mean by critical within the context of your literature review. Mingers, 2225-6, argues that there are 4 aspects of a critical approach that should be fostered by management education. Critique of rhetoric, critique of tradition, critique of authority, critique of objectivity. The first of these, the critique of rhetoric, means appraising or evaluating a problem with effective use of language. In the context of your critical literature review, this emphasizes the need for you, as the reviewer, to use your skills to make reasoned judgments and to argue effectively in writing. The other three aspects Mingers identifies also have implications for being critical when reading and writing about the work of others. This includes using other literature sources to question where justification exists, the conventional wisdom, critique of tradition, and the dominant view portrayed in the literature you are reading, critique of authority. Finally, it is likely also to include recognizing in your review that the knowledge and information you are discussing are not value-free, critique of objectivity. Being critical in reviewing the literature is, therefore, a combination of your skills and the attitude with which you read and your ability to write cogently. In critically reviewing the literature, you need to read the literature about your research topic with some skepticism and be willing to question what you read, the term critical referring to the judgment you exercise. This means as you write your review you need to be constantly considering and justifying your own critical stance with clear arguments and references to the literature rather than just giving your own opinion. As you review the literature, your existing views and opinions are likely to be challenged by what you read. You should welcome these challenges and recognize that through thinking critically about what you are reading, your views and opinions may alter. Critically reviewing the literature for your research project, therefore, requires you to have gained topic-based background knowledge, understand the ability to reflect upon and to analyze the literature, and based on this to make reasoned judgments that are argued effectively in writing. Your written review provides a detailed and justified analysis of and commentary on the merits and faults of the key literature within your chosen area. Part of your critical judgment will involve you in identifying those theories and research findings that are most relevant to your research aims and objectives. This is not as easy as it seems, and will invariably involve you in reading and evaluating literature that you subsequently judge is not relevant to your review. For some research topics, as you begin to review the literature, you will observe that a certain theory and set of ideas provide the 76 in critical and TEUR osses and forms of i.e. theoretical base for much of the research reported. This theory is likely to be considered by researchers as seminal. In other words, it has been of great importance or had great influence. Seminal theories will often also be discussed in textbooks on your research area, the associated articles being frequently cited. At the same time, you will begin to recognize those researchers whose work is seminal and has been most influential in relation to your topic. The work of these researchers is likely to be discussed more widely in journal articles, and they may also be referred to by name in textbooks. These researchers are likely to be recognized as the experts in your research area. However, although others consider a particular theory seminal and recognize particular researchers as experts for your topic, this does not mean that you should ignore alternative theories and other researchers. These will also need to be considered in relation to your own research in your critical review. For other research topics, you are likely to need to integrate a number of different theoretical strands to develop your understanding and provide a firm foundation. You may through your reading discover that there are contrasting theoretical perspectives on the same topic, or it may be that your research needs to integrate two or more theories from different subject areas. Dees 2003 suggests that this means you should refer to and assess research by those recognized as experts in your chosen area accurately, consider, discuss and evaluate research that offers both similar and different perspectives on your chosen area, explain your evaluation regarding the value of this research, showing clearly how it relates to your research and acknowledging key work, develop a clear, persuasive, logical, balanced and justified argument, distinguish clearly between research findings and researchers' opinions, ensure your references are completely accurate. When you draft your critical review, section 3.10, the extent to which your literature review is critical can be evaluated using the checklist in box 3.1. The more questions that you can answer yes to, the more likely your review is critical. Box 3.1. Checklist. Evaluating whether your literature review is critical. Have you heavy checkmark contextualized your own research showing how your research question relates to previous research reviewed? Acknowledging seminal work, heavy checkmark assess the strengths and weaknesses of the previous research reviewed in relation to your research topic, heavy checkmark been rigorous in your discussion and assessment of previous research. Heavy checkmark been balanced, referring to research that is counter to, as well as supports, your views and opinions. Having now reviewed the literature, heavy checkmark distinguished clearly between research findings and researchers' opinions, heavy checkmark made reasoned judgments about the value and relevance of others' research to your own, heavy checkmark justified clearly your own ideas, heavy checkmark highlighted those areas where new research, yours, is needed to provide fresh insights and taken these into account in your arguments in particular where there are inconsistencies in current knowledge and understanding, you have identified potential bias in previous research. 77. Chapter 3 Critically reviewing the literature. There are omissions in published research. Research findings need to be tested in alternative context. Evidence is lacking, inconclusive, contradictory, or limited. Heavy checkmark developed a clear, persuasive, logical argument. Heavy checkmark accurately referenced all research to which you refer. Purposes of a critical review. The critical review provides the foundation on which your research is built. As you will have gathered from the introduction, a critical review will help you to develop a good understanding and insight into relevant previous research and the trends that have emerged. Likewise, you should not expect to start your research without first reading what other researchers in your area have already found out. Most critical reviews fulfill a series of related purposes. These can be summarized as providing Ridley 2018, University of Southern California 2021. The historical background to your research, an overview of your research's context by locating it in the associated contemporary debates, issues and questions provided by existing literature, resolution to conflicts among apparently contradictory previous research, a discussion of the relevant theories and concepts that underpin your research, definitions and clarifications regarding how relevant terms are being used in your research, insights into related research that your own work is designed to extend or challenge, supporting evidence that your research questions and aims are worth researching, in other words, their significance. Your literature review therefore contextualizes your research in relation to previous research. You are, in effect, providing the background to and justification for your own research project. However, the way you do this in your critical review will depend on the approach you are intending to use in your research. For some research projects, you will use the literature to help you to identify theories and ideas that you will subsequently test with data. This is known as a deductive approach, section 4.5, in which you use the literature to develop a theoretical or conceptual framework for subsequent testing. For other research projects, the literature review, while outlining what is known, will reveal an aspect about which very little is known or for which there is no clear theoretical explanation. This can be likened to the literature revealing an unopened box within which you do not know what is happening. In such instances, the literature review will provide the context and justification for finding out what is going on inside the box. You will use data to explore what is going on inside the box and from these insights develop a theory or conceptual framework. These will subsequently be related to the literature in your follow-ing discussion. This is known as an inductive approach, section 4.5, and although your research still has a clearly defined aim with research questions and objectives, you need to first use data to either get a clear feeling of what is going on or better understand the nature of the problem in order to create a conceptual framework or develop a theory. It may also be that you wish to explore the phenomenon in a particular context without being oversensitized to existing theoretical constructs. We believe such an approach cannot be taken without a competent knowledge of the literature in your subject area. 78. E critical and TEUR osses and forms of re-IE. Forms of critical review.
Mama.
The way you organize your critical review depends on your research question and aim. Forms of review have been classified and grouped in a wide variety of ways. One our students have found useful categorizes critical literature reviews into 6 forms. University of Southern California 2021. Integrative, critically analyzing and examining the main ideas and relationships in representative literature on a topic in an integrative way. The purpose is to provide an overview and either generate new frameworks and perspectives on a topic for testing or, alternatively, reveal an area where it is unclear what is happening. Theoretical, examining the body of theory that has accumulated in regard to an issue, concept, theory, or phenomenon. Theoretical reviews are often used to establish what theories exist and the relationships between them. They are also used to reveal a lack of appropriate theories or that current theories are inadequate for explaining new or emerging research problems. They can therefore be used as the basis for developing new theory to be tested or revealing an area where it is unclear what is happening. Box 3.3. Historical, examining the evolution of research on a particular topic over a period of time to place it in an historical context. They are used to place research in an historical context and identify directions for future work. Methodological, focusing on research approaches, section 4.5, strategies, section 5.5, data collection techniques or analysis procedures, rather than the research findings. Methodological reviews are often used to provide a framework for understanding a method or methodology and to enable researchers to draw on a wide body of methodological knowledge and can help highlight potential ethical issues. Argumentative, examining literature selectively to either support or refute well-established positions or assumptions. They are used to establish an alternative viewpoint, although care must be taken not to introduce bias if they are used to develop summary conclusions about what is known. Systematic, which uses a comprehensive pre-planned strategy for locating, critically appraising, analyzing, and synthesizing existing research that is pertinent to a clearly formulated research question to allow conclusions to be reached about what is known. Section 3.9. They are used to summarize all relevant research about the topic. The most common of these forms for student research projects is the integrative review, although systematic and theoretical reviews are also popular. It is also worth noting that, depending upon the precise focus of your research project, your review may be a combination of these types. For example, a theoretical review may be supplemented with an integrative review, or a historical review may focus on the development of a particular body of theory. Alternatively, following an integrative or theoretical review, a methodological review may be incorporated into the methodology. It is impossible to review every single piece of the literature before collecting your data. Consequently, your literature review should review the most relevant and significant research on your topic. When you write your critical review, you will need to show how your findings and the theories you have developed or are using relate to the research. That has gone before. This will help you demonstrate that you are familiar with what is already known about your research topic. 79. Chapter 3, critically reviewing the literature. 3.3e content and structure of a critical re-IE. The content of a critical review. As you begin to find, read, and evaluate the literature, you will need to think how to combine the academic theories and research findings about which you are reading to form the critical review that will appear in your project report. Your review will need to evaluate the research that has already been undertaken in the area of your research project, show and explain the relationships between published research findings and reference the literature in which they were reported, Appendix 1. It will draw out the key points and trends, recognizing any omissions and bias, and present them in a logical way that also shows the relationship to your own research. In doing this, you will provide readers of your project report with the necessary background knowledge to your research questions and objectives, and establish the boundaries of your own research. Your review will also enable the readers to see your ideas against the background of previous published research in the area. This does not necessarily mean that your ideas must extend, follow, or prove those set out in the literature. You may be highly critical of the earlier research reported in the literature and seek to question or revise it through your own research. However, if you wish to do this, you must still review this literature, explain clearly why you consider it may require revision, and justify your own ideas through clear argument and with reference to the literature. In considering the content of your critical review, you will therefore need to include the key academic theories within your chosen area of research that are pertinent to, or contextualize, your research question, to demonstrate that your knowledge of your chosen area is up to date, to enable those reading your project report to find the original publications that you cite through clear, complete referencing. When you draft your critical review, section 3.10, its content can be evaluated using the checklist in box 3.2. Possible structures for a critical review. The precise structure of the critical review is usually your choice, although you should check, as it may be specified in the assessment criteria. 3 common structures are: Box 3.2. Checklist. Evaluating TE content of your critical literature review. Heavy checkmark. Have you ensured that the literature covered relates clearly to your research question and objectives? Heavy checkmark. Have you covered the most relevant and significant theories of recognized experts in the area? Heavy checkmark. Have you covered the most relevant and significant literature, or at least a representative sample? Heavy checkmark. Have you included up-to-date relevant literature? Heavy checkmark. Have you referenced all the literature used in the format prescribed in the assessment criteria? 80. E-content and structure of a critical re-IE. A single chapter, a series of chapters, for example, in a larger research project, occurring throughout the project report as you tackle various issues, for example, where your research project is conducted inductively. In all project reports, you should return to the key issues you raise in your literature review in your discussion and conclusions, section 14.3. In the opening vignette, we highlighted a common problem with literature reviews. They just describe what each author has written, one author after another, horizontal arrows in figure 3.2, each item being selected subjectively by the researcher, part 2018. It is much easier to be critical and more interesting to read if you take a thematic approach, comparing and, where necessary, contrasting those authors who discuss each theme, vertical arrows in figure 3.2. Although there is no single structure that your critical review should take, our students have found it useful to think of the review as a funnel in which you 1. Start at a more general level before narrowing down to your specific research questions and objectives. 2. Provide a brief overview of key ideas and themes. 3. Summarize, compare and contrast the research of the key authors for each theme. 4. Narrow down to highlight that which is most relevant to your own research questions and objectives. 5. Provide a detailed account of these theories and findings and explain how they are related. 6. Highlight those aspects where your own research will provide fresh insights linking explicitly to your research questions and objectives. 7. Outline briefly how subsequent sections of your project report will address these aspects. Whichever way you structure your review, it must demonstrate that you have read, understood and evaluated the literature you have located, and know the themes and their authors, which are key to your own research. The key to structuring a critical literature review is therefore to link the different ideas you find in the literature to form a coherent and cohesive argument, which sets in context and justifies your research. Obviously, it should relate to your research question and objectives. It should show an explicit link. Theme 1, Theme 2, Theme 3, Theme Authors May and Van Halen, 2020. Mercury, 1990. Taylor and Potgieter, 2021. Authors' ideas about themes compare and... Theme 5. Figure 3.2 Literature Review Structure. 81. From these as well as a clear link to empirical work that will follow. Subsequent parts of your project report, section 14.3, must follow on from this. Box 3.3 provides an extract from a literature review in a recently published paper. Box 3.3. Focus on management, research, structure of TE literature re-IE. A refereed academic journal article by Neve Iceva, Ira Grunewald and Mark Saunders, published in the Service Industries Journal, Iceva et al. 2020, offers a theoretical review and synthesis of the trust theory and customer service research literature. The following extract is taken from the first 3 paragraphs of the introduction to their article, although your review will be longer than this extract, pages 101 to 2. It illustrates a structure that, in the first paragraph, starts at a more general level looking at the nature and importance of trust for organizational success. Then, in the second paragraph, narrows the focus to trust research in the service industries, highlighting how scholars have adopted different conceptualizations of trust. And in the third paragraph, builds on these points to justify the need for the review, arguing that service industries trust researchers need to engage more fully with the theoretical foundations of trust, outlining the contribution of the article and justifying their use of a theoretical review. Structure of their review article. 2005. Correspondingly, fostering customer trust is considered a viable way for tackling challenges surrounding attracting new and retaining existing customers in highly competitive contexts. Sun and Lin, 2010. Furthermore, trust is shown to contribute to achieving greater competitive advantage. Barney and Anson 1, Berry 1, Warrington et al. 2000. Sales effectiveness, U et al. 200, Onson and Grayson 2005, customer loyalty, Chen and Mao 200, Law and Choi 2012, Win 201, Sertishmuck et al. 2002, customer commitment, Johnson and Grayson 2005, Win 201, Pereira et al. 201, Van Tonder and Petza 2018, improved perception of value, Sertishmuck et al. 2002, Van Tonder and Petza 2018, and collaborative, cooperative, and successful exchange relationships, Doney and Cannon 17, Grayson et al. 2008, Morgan and Unt 1. Trust has experienced a considerable increase of scholarly interest across different service industries. The remainder of the introduction outlines the trust is a complex, multidisciplinary concept that is recognized as a strategic asset, Castaldo et al. 2010, and vital element for organizational success, Dietz and Gillespie 2011, Raymer and Cook 2004. In particular, service firms have recognized increasingly that the building and maintenance of trusting relationships with customers is the key success factor, Bozsik 2017, Bequest KCL et al. Agaria and Singh 2011, Bachman and Aher 200, such as finance, Chow et al. 2008, Gillespie and Early 201, Anson 2017, Osaba et al. 2018, Win 201, Wong et al. 2015, Tourism and Hospitality, Altine and Tahiri 201, DeWitt et al. 2008, Gregory et al. 201, Nunku and Smith 2015, Pereira et al. 201, Rather et al. 201, Tusidaya and Park 2018, Wong et al. 201, Healthcare Kalman and Rowe 200, Dean et al. 2017, Murray and McCrone 201, Nienaber and Skew 201, Peters and Bilton 2018, Skinner et al. 200, Eng and Wasti 2011, Media, Ulyari et al. 2015, Akab 2010, Lee 2010, Technology, Baru et al. 2018, Ian et al. 201, MC Knight 2005, and the like. This surge of interest has paralleled the shift of focus from transactional to relationship-based service orientation, scholars adopting different conceptualizations of trust. Applauding this increase in scholarly interest, we contend advancement of service industries trust research could benefit from engaging more fully with the theoretical foundations of trust, explore ING cross-disciplinary debates, and considering 82. Literature sources. Associated questions. Our contribution is therefore to review the fundamental trust theories while synthesizing service industries and management literatures on trust, the purpose being to provide a foundation for service industry scholars alongside service firms and their representatives focusing on customer trust. Recognizing that a systematic review is only suitable for some research purposes, Pettigrew and Roberts 200, adherence to preset criteria restricting the extent of the diversity among included publications, Castle 2011, and invariably necessitating constraining the focus perhaps to a single industry, we have sought more. Volumes such as Handbook of Trust Research, Bachman and Aher 200, Landmark Papers on Trust, Bachman and Aher 2008, Handbook of Advances in Trust Research, Bachman and Aher 201, and the Handbook of Research Methods on Trust, Lyon et al. 2015, alongside those utilized in 17 most highly cited trust articles considered by Iceva et al. 2015. These theories are explored in the service industries context using empirical work, such as published in the Services Industries Journal. Although we acknowledge the possibility of overlooking potentially relevant and crucial work through such an approach, we believe we provide flexibility and broader focus when evaluating the extant trust theory. Consequently, we have Carr read out a theoretical review, Saunders et al. 201, focusing on those trust theories frequently identified and utilized in key trust literature, in particular, the Ornal of Trust Research, widely cited research. 3 point for literature sources. A clear and comprehensive representation of key trust theory that constitutes a base for those service industry scholars undertaking trust research. Source, Neve I, Grunewald K, and Saunders, MNK, 2020. Copyright Informa UK Limited, trading as Taylor and Francis Group, reproduced by permission of the publisher. The amount of literature available to help you to develop a good understanding of and insight into previous research is expanding rapidly as new resources are developed and made available online. The literature sources you are likely to make most use of are often referred to as white literature sources, these being formally published scholarly items, particularly journals, that have been peer-reviewed; gray literature sources, these being items that have not been through the peer review process and have been published in formats such as conference proceedings, dissertations or theses, government reports and other institutions' reports. The process of peer review is important as it means that prior to publication the work has been scrutinized and evaluated by others who are experts in the same field and deemed worthy of publication. Historically, gray literature has been difficult to access as it has not been included in academic databases, Adams et al. 2017. However, while digitization means gray literature are far easier to find and retrieve, it is crucial to evaluate their credibility. Section 3.7. Your university's librarians are likely to be aware of a wide range of these business and management literature sources that can be accessed principally from your university library's web pages and will keep themselves up to date with new resources. Those resources that are most likely to be of use to your literature review are usually print and electronic materials, and those subscription databases that include information from journals, electronic books, magazines, and newspapers. In addition, as discussed in sections 8.2 and 8.4, library subscription databases also offer access to secondary data. Many universities now offer a single search interface, which allows integrated access to search their collections of print, electronic, and audiovisual materials including journals, books, and all their subscription databases. 83. Chapter 3, critically reviewing the literature. The white and gray literature sources you are most likely to use are outlined in Table 3.1. When placing your ideas in the context of earlier research, white literature is likely to be the most important, particularly academic journals. Books authored by academics are likely to be more important than professional and trade journals in this context. Journals. Journals are also known as periodicals, serials, and magazines, and are published on a regular basis. Journals are a vital literature source for any research. The articles are accessed using full-text databases such as Business Source Complete and Emerald Management Plus, including through your university's single search interface, this usually being restricted to members of the university, Tables 3.1 and 3.2. Subject to copyright restrictions, many academics also make pre-publication versions of their articles available at no charge on platforms such as academia.edu and ResearchGate. While the articles uploaded are not facsimiles of published versions, usually being an earlier draft, they are still extremely useful. Most universities make copies of research outputs authored by their staff available online free of cost or other barriers, open access, through their institutional repositories or research archives. In addition, a growing number of national governments, including the UK, have through access to research initiatives provided free, walk-in access to academic articles and research in public libraries, access to Research 2021. Trade and some professional journals may be covered only partially by online databases, Table 3.2, but can usually be accessed through search engines such as Google. You may therefore need to browse these journals' web pages regularly to be sure of finding useful literature. Beware, although available online, they are often only available to subscribers. For many academic journals you can receive email alerts of the Table of Contents, TOC. TOCs can also be browsed online and downloaded through tertiary literature sources such as Journal TOCs and the British Library's ZTOC database, Table 3.2. Similarly, social network platforms allow you to follow particular academics and receive automatic updates regarding their work. Articles in peer-reviewed, refereed, academic journals such as the Journal of Management Studies and the Academy of Management Review are evaluated by academic peers prior to publication to assess their quality and suitability. They are usually written by those considered to be experts in the field, pay rigorous attention to detail and verification of information, and contain an extensive list of references. Such articles are written for a narrower audience of scholars with a particular interest in the field. The language used may be technical or highly specialized as a prior knowledge of the topic will be assumed. Prior to being accepted for publication, articles usually undergo several serious revisions based on the peer reviewer's comments before they are published. These are usually the most useful for research projects, as they will contain detailed reviews of relevant earlier research. Not all academic journals are refereed. Most non-refereed academic journals will have an editor and possibly an editorial board with subject knowledge to select articles. The relevance and usefulness of such journals varies consider. Ably and occasionally, you may need to be wary of possible bias. Professional journals, such as People Management, are produced for their members by organizations such as the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, CIPD, the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, ACCA, and the American Marketing Association, AMA. They contain a mix of news-related items and articles that are more detailed. However, you need to exercise caution, as articles can be biased towards their authors or the organization's views. Articles are often of a more practical nature and more closely related to professional needs than those in academic journals. Some organizations. 84. Literature sources will also produce newsletters or current awareness publications that you may find useful for up-to-date information. Some professional organizations now give access to selected articles in their journals via their web pages, although these may be only accessible to members. Trade journals fulfill a similar function to professional journals. They are published by trade organizations or aimed at particular industries or trades such as catering or mining. Often, they focus on new products or services and news items. They rarely contain articles based on empirical research, although some provide summaries of research. You therefore need to evaluate these particularly carefully if you wish to use them in your research project. Table 3.1 Sources of white and gray literature. SE for TE Source Content Literature Review Origin Y Online Data Assays I Ili Ala Ility. Peer-reviewed refereed academic journal. On-refereed academic journal. Professional journals. Trade journal / mega ines. Detailed research articles. Written by experts and evaluated by other experts to assess quality and suitability for publication. Rig ORS attention paid to detail and verification. May contain detailed reports of research. Selected by editor or editorial board with subject knowledge. Mix of news items and practical detailed accounts. Sometimes include summaries of research. Mix of news items and practical detailed accounts. Most useful of all. Well covered. In addition, content pages often available for searching via publishers' websites. Varies considerably. Beware of bias. Insights into practice but use with caution. Insights into practice but use with caution. Reasonably well covered. In addition, content pages often available for searching via publishers' websites. Reasonably well covered by online databases. In addition, content pages often available for searching via professional associations' websites. Content pages often available for searching via professional associations' websites. Online through various subscription services. Increasingly available via institutional repositories, national access to research initiatives, or social networking platforms. Those not available may be obtained using interlibrary loans. Online through various subscription services. Increasingly available via institutional repositories, national access to research initiatives, or social networking platforms. Those not available may be obtained using interlibrary loans. Online through various subscription services. Those not available may be obtained using interlibrary loans. Professional associations may also provide access to their journals via their own web pages. Not as widely available in university libraries as peer-reviewed academic journals. Try the Trade Association's associated website. Continued. 85. Chapter 3 Critically Reviewing the Literature. Table 3.1 Continued. SE for TE Source Content Literature Review Origin Y Online Data Assays I Ili Ala Ility. Books and EOOS. East Media. Conference Proceedings. Reports. Theses. Written for specific audiences. Usually in an ordered and relatively accessible format. Often draw on wide range of sources. Written for a particular market segment. Filter dependent on events. May be written from particular viewpoint. Selected papers presented at a conference. Topic specific. Written by academics and organizations. Those from established organizations often of high quality. Often most up-to-date research but very specific. Particularly useful for an overview and to find recognized experts. Good for topical developments. Beware of possibly bias in report ing and coverage. Can be very useful if on same theme as research. Very useful when matches your topic. Good for doctorate level and to a lesser extent MPhil, research degrees, otherwise less useful. Searches can be undertaken on university OPACs, **. National newspapers reasonably well covered by specialized databases. Depends on conference, although often limited. Specialist indexes sometimes available, such as index to conference proceedings. Poor, although some specialized indexes exist. Covered by indices of theses. Increasingly online through University Library IES. Those not available locally may be obtained using interlibrary loans. Online access to STO RISE, often with added information for most national and international quality newspapers via university libraries or subscription services. Not widely held by university libraries. Can be difficult to find even using search engines. Increasingly only contain abstracts. Not widely held by university libraries. Often available online. Increasingly available online, although can also be obtained using interlibrary loans. Asterisk OPAC, online public access. 86. Literature sources. Table 3.2 databases, interfaces, platforms and search engines and their coverage. cambridgeacademia.edu. Access to research. British National Bibliography, BNB. British Library Integrated Catalogue. British Library Management and Business Studies Portal. British Newspapers 1600 to 1900 Business Source Complete L. Reard. The Conference Index. Data Center. EI Lee EO ICE. Google Scholar. Hospitality and Tourism Index. Ingenta Connect. ISI Web of Knowledge. Nexus. Books. Books and monographs are written for specific audiences. Some are aimed at the academic market with a theoretical slant. Others, aimed at practicing professionals, may be more applied in their content. The material in books is usually presented in a more ordered and accessible manner than in journals, pulling together a wider range of topics. They are, therefore, particularly useful as introductory sources to help clarify your research questions and objectives or the research methods you intend to use. Most academic textbooks can be accessed in electronic form using your university library single search interface, and many, like this one, are also supported by websites providing additional information. However, not all books will be available electronically, some only being available as print copies. In addition, published books may contain out-of-date material even by the time they are published. News media. News media including newspapers are a good source of topical events, developments within business and government, as well as recent statistical information such as share prices. They also sometimes discuss recent research reports, Box 3.4. Back copies of newspapers starting in the early 1990s are available online via a full-text subscription service, such as ProQuest One Business, Table 3.2. Current editions of newspapers are available online and in print, although there is often a charge for full online access. Items in earlier issues are more difficult to access and often only include text. An exception is the Times Digital Archive 1785 to 2014, Table 3.2 of the Times newspaper. You need to be careful as, notwithstanding accusations of fake news, news media may contain bias in their coverage, be it political, geographical, or personal. Reporting can also be inaccurate, and you may not pick up any subsequent amendments or retractions. In addition, the news presented is filtered depending on events at the time, with priority given to more. AUKUS on research in TENES. Feeling the strain, stress and anxiety. Weigh on world workers. By Emma Jacobs and Lucy Warwick Ching. The intensity of work since the start of the pandemic pushed Sarah close to a breakdown. The owner of a small UK-based business could not sleep or eat. The pressure to keep the business going was all-consuming. I couldn't take time off because I had hundreds of clients relying on me and looking to me to guide them through. Judging by a global survey by the Financial Times on work and mental health, to which more than 250 readers responded, Sarah's experience was not unique. The respondents, who came from all corners of the world, were predominantly white-collar from sectors including education, financial services and media. They spoke of the difficulties and benefits of new work practices, and about the demands spurred by the pandemic that have affected their mental health. 89. The pandemic has illuminated the areas of respondents' lives, including career seniority, home environment, and caring responsibilities, that have had an impact on people's ability to do their job. Surveys show that mental well-being varies across the world. Britons, according to research by YouGov, are the most likely to report that COVID has harmed their mental health, 65%, followed by those in Hong Kong, 63%, and Italy, 62%, with Germans the least affected, 44%. Tears, stress, and feeling overwhelmed came up regularly. Some had to take time off due to burnout, others spoke of a lack of motivation, difficulty sleeping, and increased drinking. I've been ending the day by opening a bottle of wine or beer, which has quickly become a daily habit, says John. In the US, Rachel says her runs are an outlet not just for exercise, but so that her kids do not see her cry. Yet there was also liberation for many workers who had swapped offices for their homes. They could set their own timetables, no longer tethered by the grind of the commute, eat meals with their families and exercise throughout the day. Some praised naps and the joys of watching Netflix in downtime. Employers' responses varied. Some proved empathetic, others definitely did not. As one respondent put it, the workload is insurmountable and there is denial about the issues, so that management deemed the inability to achieve the unachievable objectives as a personal failing. Here is what readers told the FT in confidence about working during the pandemic. We have used first names only, where we have been given permission shown, and anonymized some replies. Source of abridged extract, Jacobs, E., and Warwick Ching, L., 2021. Feeling the strain, stress and anxiety weigh on the world's workers, FT.com, February 8th. Available at https://www.ft.com content/02399723845FFB98273357708E512. Access March 11, 2021. Copyright 2021 Financial Times Limited. Reports. Reports include market analyses and research reports such as those produced by Mintel and Data Central, government reports and academic reports. Even if you are able to locate these, you may find it difficult to gain access to them because they are often not available free of charge. Section 8.3. Reports are not well indexed in the databases, and you will need to rely on specific search tools such as the British Library Management and Business Studies Portal, Table 3.2. Freedom of information legislation by many governments now means a vast number of reports are now available online, for example, through the European Union's Europa website and the Commission Statistics website Eurostat. These and other governmental gateways and archives are listed in Table 8.2. Conference proceedings. Conference proceedings, sometimes referred to as symposia, are often published as unique titles within journals or as books. Most conferences will have a theme that is very specific, but some have a wide-ranging overview. Proceedings are not well indexed by tertiary literature, so, as with reports, you may have to rely on specific search tools such as the Conference Index, Table 3.2, as well as general search engines such as Google. If you do locate and are able to obtain the proceedings for a conference on the theme of your research, you will have a wealth of relevant information. Many conferences have associated web pages providing abstracts, and occasionally the full papers presented at the conference. 90. Planning your literature search. Theses. Theses are unique, and so for a major research project can be a good source of detailed information. They will also be a good source of further references. Unfortunately, they can be difficult to locate and, when found, difficult to access as there may be only one copy at the awarding institution. Specific search tools such as Ethos, the eThesis online service, Table 3.2, are offering access to an increasing number of digitized theses. Only research degrees, in particular PhDs, are covered well by these tertiary resources. Research undertaken as part of a top master's degree, usually called a dissertation, is not covered as systematically. 3.5 Planning your literature search. It is important that you plan this search carefully to ensure that you locate relevant and up-to-date literature. This will enable you to establish what research has previously been published in your area and to relate your own research to it. All our students have found their literature search a time-consuming process, which takes far longer than expected. Fortunately, time spent planning will be repaid in time saved when searching for relevant literature. As you start to plan your search, you need to beware of information overload. One of the easiest ways to avoid this is to start the main search for your critical review with clearly defined research questions, objectives, and outline proposals sections 2.4 and 2.5. Before commencing your literature search, we suggest that you undertake further planning by writing down your search strategy and, if possible, discussing it with your project tutor. This should include the parameters of your search, the search terms and phrases you intend to use, the online databases and search engines you intend to use, the criteria you intend to use to select the relevant and useful studies from all the items you find. While it is inevitable that your search strategy will be refined as your literature search progresses, we believe that such a planned approach is important as it forces you to think carefully about your research strategy and justify, at least to yourself, why you are doing what you are doing. Defining the parameters of your search. For most research questions and objectives, you will have a good idea of which subject matter is going to be relevant. You will, however, be less clear about the parameters within which you need to search. In particular, you need to be clear about the following, derived from Bell and Waters 2018. Language of publication, e.g. English, subject area, e.g. accounting, business sector, e.g. manufacturing, geographical area, e.g. Europe, publication period, e.g. the last 10 years, literature type, e.g. peer-reviewed journals and books. One way of starting to firm up these parameters is to re-examine your lecture notes and course textbooks in the area of your research question. While re-examining these, we 91. Chapter 3 Critically reviewing the literature. Suggest you make a note of subjects that appear most pertinent to your research question and the names of relevant authors. These will be helpful when generating possible search terms and phrases later. For example, if your research was on the adoption of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by public sector organizations, you might identify the subject area as sustainable development and public sector. Implicit in this is the need to think broadly. A frequent comment we hear from students who have attempted a literature search is, "There's nothing written on my research topic." This is usually because they have identified one or more of their parameters too narrowly or chosen their search terms poorly. We therefore recommend that if you encounter this problem, you broaden one or more of your parameters to include material that your narrower search would not have located. See box 3.7. Generating your search terms. It is important at this stage to read both articles by key authors and recent review articles in the area of your research. This will help you to define your subject matter and to suggest appropriate search terms and phrases. Recent review articles in your research area are often helpful here, as they discuss the current state of research for a particular topic and can help you to refine your search terms. In addition, they will probably contain references to other work that is pertinent to your research questions and objectives, box 3.5. If you are unsure about review articles, your project tutor should be able to point you in the right direction. Another potentially useful source of references are dissertations and theses in your university's library. After rereading your lecture notes and textbooks and undertaking this limited reading, you will have a list of subjects that appear relevant to your research project. You now need to define precisely which search terms are relevant to your research. The identification of search terms is the most important part of planning your search for relevant literature, Bell and Waters 2018. Search terms are the basic terms that describe your research questions and objectives, and will be used to search the tertiary literature. Box 3.5. Focus on student research. Generating search terms. And research question was, how do the actual management requirements of a school pupil record administration system differ from those suggested by the literature? She brainstormed this question with her. And phrases. Schools, pupil records, administration, user requirements, computer, management information system, access, legislation, information, database, security, UK, Singapore, theories. The group evaluated these and others. As a result, the following search terms and phrases were selected: pupil records, management information system, computer, database, user requirement, online dictionaries, and encyclopedias were used subsequently to add to the choice of search terms. Peer group, all of whom were teachers in Singapore. The resulting list included the following search terms. Student record, MIS, security. Han made a note of these prior to using them in various combinations to search her university library single search interface. 92. Planning your literature search. Search terms, which can include authors' family names identified in the examination of your lecture notes and course textbooks, can be identified using one or a number of different techniques in combination. Those found most useful by our students include discussion. We believe you should be taking every opportunity to discuss your research. In Discuss ing your work with others, whether online or face-to-face, you will be sharing your ideas, getting feedback, and obtaining new ideas and approaches. This process will help you to refine and clarify your topic. Brainstorming. Brainstorming has already been outlined as a technique for helping you to develop your research question, section 2.3. However, it is also helpful for generating search terms. Either individually or as part of a group, you note all the words and short phrases that come to mind on your research topic, box 3.5. These are then evaluated in search terms and phrases selected. Initial reading, dictionaries, encyclopedias, handbooks, and thesauruses. To produce the most relevant search terms, you may need to build on your Brainstorm ing session with support materials such as dictionaries, encyclopedias, handbooks, and thesauruses, both general and subject specific. These are also good starting points for new topics with which you may be unfamiliar and for related subject areas. Initial reading, particularly of recent review articles, may also be of help here. Project tutors, colleagues, and librarians can also be useful sources of ideas. It is also possible to obtain definitions via the internet. Google offers a define search option by typing define frowny face enter term that provides links to websites providing defini tie-ins. Definitions are also offered in online encyclopedias such as Wikipedia. These are often available in multiple languages, and although registered users are allowed to edit the entries, inappropriate changes are usually removed quickly. While entries tend to become more comprehensive and balanced as contributors add to and revise them, Wikipedia 2021 makes no guarantee of validity. However, while online encyclopedias such as Wikipedia may be useful for a quick reference or in helping to define keywords, your university will almost certainly expect you to justify the definitions in your research project using refereed journal articles or textbooks. Relevance trees. Relevance trees provide a useful method of bringing some form of structure to your literature search and of guiding your search process, Sharp et al. 2002. They look similar to an organization chart and are a hierarchical, graph-like arrangement of headings and subheadings, box 3.6. These headings and subheadings describe your research questions and objectives and may be terms, including authors' names, with which you can search. Relevance trees are often constructed after brainstorming and can help you decide those search terms that are most relevant to your research questions and objectives, those areas you will search first and which your search will use later, the areas that are more important, these tend to have more branches. 93. Chapter 3 Critically Reviewing the Literature. Box 3.6. Focus on student research. Using a relevance tree. Simone's research question was, how does power facilitate knowledge integration in supply chains? After brainstorming her question, she decided to construct a relevance tree on her tablet using the search terms and phrases that had been generated. Using her relevance tree, Simone identified those areas that she needed to search immediately in blue, and those that she particularly needed to focus on, starred asterisk. To construct a relevance tree. 1. Start with your research question or an objective at the top level. 2. Identify 2 or more subject areas that you think are important. 3. Further subdivide each major subject area into subareas that you think are of relevance. 4. Further divide the subareas into more precise subareas that you think are of relevance. 5. Identify those areas that you need to search immediately and those that you particularly need to focus on. Your project tutor will be of particular help here. 6. As you're reading and reviewing progress, add new areas to your relevance tree. Mind mapping tools such as SimpleMind 2021 and software such as MindGenius 2021 can be used to help generate relevance trees. Many also allow you to attach notes to your relevance tree and can help generate an initial structure for your literature review. 3.6 Conducting your literature search. Your literature search will probably be conducted using a variety of approaches. Searching online databases, obtaining relevant literature reference in books and journal articles you have already read, browsing and scanning secondary literature in your library, general online searching, institutional repositories, and social networking platforms. 94. Conducting your literature search. Eventually, it is likely you will be using a variety of these in combination. However, we suggest that you start your search by obtaining relevant literature that has been referenced in books and articles you have already read. Although books are unlikely to give adequate up-to-date coverage of your research question, they provide a useful starting point and usually contain some references to further reading. Reading these will enable you to refine your research questions, objectives, and the associated search terms prior to searching using tertiary literature sources. It will also help you to see more clearly how your research relates to previous research and will provide fresh insights. Searching using databases. It is very tempting with easy access to the internet to start your literature search with a general search engine such as Google or Bing. While these will retrieve some useful information, they must be treated with care. Your project report is expected to be an academic piece of work and hence must use academic sources. Therefore, it is essential that you use online literature sources that provide access to academic literature. These consist of 3 types of online databases and are listed in order of likely importance to your search. 1. Full-text online databases that index and provide abstracts and full text of articles from a range of journals and sometimes books, chapters from books, reports, theses, and conferences. 2. Abstracts that only include an index of the abstracts of articles from a range of journals and sometimes books, chapters from books, reports, theses, and conferences, hence the name abstract. 3. Indexes that, as the name suggests, only index articles from a range of journals and sometimes books, chapters from books, reports, theses, and conferences. Within all of these, the information provided will be sufficient to locate the item, for example, for journal articles. Author or authors of the article, date of publication, title of the article, title of the journal, volume, and part number of the journal issue, page numbers of the article. Most searches will be undertaken to find articles using user-defined search terms or an author's name. Occasionally, you may wish to search by finding those authors who have referenced, cited, an article after it has been published. A citation index enables you to do this as it lists by author the other authors who have cited that author's work subsequent to their publication. Alternatively, if you are using the specialized search engine Google Scholar, you can find out who has cited a particular article by clicking on Cited By. The article's abstract will be useful in helping you to assess the content and relevance of an article to your research before obtaining a copy. You should beware of using abstracts as a substitute for the full article as a source of information for your research. They contain only a summary of the article and are likely to exclude much of relevance. Full text. Databases usually allow both the searching and retrieval of the full text, principally for journal articles, the articles being retrieved in portable document file, PDF format. These are read using software such as Adobe Reader, which can be downloaded free of charge. Your access to the majority of full-text databases will be paid for by a subscription from your university, Table 3.2. Universities provide direct access to these databases. 95. Chapter 3 Critically Reviewing the Literature. Through their library web pages. Many also provide database access through their library single search interface, allowing you to search both their collections of full-text articles and online public access catalog, OPAC, of print and digital books and other materials together. There are, however, some pay-as-you-use databases, where the cost of the search is passed on to the user. Specialist search engines, such as Google Scholar, are often free, but offer only limited access to the full text, Table 3.4. While many databases are intuitively to use, it is still advisable to undertake your university's online training prior to your search to find out about the specific features available. It is also vital that you plan and prepare your search in advance so your time is not wasted. Virtually all universities' library OPACs are accessible online. These provide a very useful means of locating resources. If you identify useful collections of books and journals, it is possible to make use of other university libraries during your vacation. Within the UK, the SCOMO Vacation Access Scheme allows students to use books and journals at the 170 institutions which participate in the scheme. In addition, over 70 research libraries in the UK and Ireland, including the British Library, Oxford and Cambridge Universities, and the National Libraries of Scotland and Wales, have also made their catalogues available online. These can be accessed through COPAC, the National Academic and Specialist Library Catalog. Point 2. To ensure maximum coverage in your search, you need to use all appropriate online databases. One mistake many people make is to restrict their searches to their university library single search interface or Google Scholar rather than using a variety of full-text databases. Full-text databases search facilities are usually far more sophisticated, and as each differs both geographically and types of journal included, using a selection ensures a wide coverage of available literature. Some of those more frequently used are outlined in Table 3.2. However, new databases and interfaces are being developed all the time, so it is worth establishing which are available at your university. Once your search terms have been identified, searching using databases is a relatively straightforward process. You need to 1. Make a list of the search terms that describe your research questions and objectives. 2. Search appropriate online databases. 3. Note precise details, including the search strings used, of the actual searches you have undertaken for each database. 4. Note the full reference of each item found. This can normally be done by importing the references into software for managing bibliographies, such as EndNote or Reference Manager, or research tools such as Mendeley or Zotero. 5. Wherever possible, import the article into your bibliography or research tool, or, alternatively, download it in PDF format and save it on your USB storage device or smartphone using the author, date, and a brief description as a file name. This will help you locate it later. For example, an article by Mark and colleagues on gaining access to undertake multi-organization surveys might be saved using the file name Saunders, 2017, access_surveys.pdf. Transfield et al., 2003, emphasize the importance of reporting your literature search strat EGY in sufficient detail to ensure that your search could be replicated. See Box 3.8. Your review will be based on the subset of those items found which you consider are relevant. Unlike university library single search interfaces, most full-text databases allow both full-text and abstract-only searches using natural language where you decide on the word or phrase combinations for search terms. This means you can search the complete text of an article using your search terms. All relevant results are returned, usually after applying. One details of these can be found at https://www.sconal.ac.uk. To the internet address for COPAC is https://copac.ac.uk. 96. Conducting your literature search. A process of lemmatization to your search query. This removes all inflectional endings and takes categories and inflections into account to reduce each word used as a search term to its base or lemma. However, some databases rely on or also offer the option to search using stemming. This cuts off a word's ending in order to determine the word stem. Despite using these tools, your searches may still be unsuccessful. The most frequent causes of failure are summarized in Box 3.7 as a checklist. Box 3.7. Checklist. Minimizing RO lems at your data ASE circ. Heavy checkmark is the spelling incorrect behavior is spelt with a U in the U but without in the USA. Heavy checkmark is the language incorrect chemist in the U but drugstores in the USA. Heavy checkmark are you using incorrect terminology. In recent years some terms have been replaced by others, such as redundancy being replaced by downsizing. Box 3.8. Focus on management. Research. Raiming TE System T at sustains to IC leaders, IT rug follow airs continued support. In their recent article in the International Journal of Management Reviews, Mergen and Osbelgen, 2021, use a narrative literature review to address the allure of toxic leaders and illustrate the processes and mechanisms that motivate these leaders' followers to remain. Drawing on Buddha's concept of ilusayo, whereby individuals believe that the game they engage in is significant and the benefits desirable, they argue that a better understanding of these followers is needed to address the negative consequences of toxic leadership. Heavy checkmark are you using recognized acronyms and abbreviations, or example, U for United Kingdom, or BA instead of British Airways. Heavy checkmark are you avoiding jargon and using accepted terminology, or example, out-of-the-box thinking rather than creativity. Heavy checkmark are you searching over a sensible publication period, or example, the last 15 years rather than the last 5 years. Heavy checkmark are you searching the most suitable type of literature for your research project, or example, peer-reviewed, refereed, journal articles rather than all articles. Before starting their narrative review, the authors were aware of key texts and theories of both toxic leadership and Bourdieusian elogio. They also had a well-defined research purpose to explain why individuals may become and remain followers of toxic leaders. Their narrative review process started using a small number of articles and books to identify key authors and other articles as starting points in each of the different literatures on which they were drawing. Alongside combing through recent articles in relevant journals, they also searched Web of Science and Google Scholar for combinations of search terms. These included toxic, destructive leaders, pseudo-transformational leaders, followers, illusion, personal uncertainty, and ethical decision-making. For each search they read abstracts and reviewed those papers considered relevant in detail. Noting the literature on followership is well developed. They found relevant articles on toxic followers necessitat. Their use of toxic leadership articles to understand how followers were framed in the literature. Bourdieusian elogio was therefore used as the main umbrella construct in their building of a conceptual model. 97. Chapter 3 Critically reviewing the literature. Table 3.3 Search connectors. Connector purpose and low outcome. And. Or. Narrow search. Widen search. CL to from search. Recruitment and interviewing and skills. Recruitment or selection. Recruitment not selection. Only articles containing all 3 search terms selected. Articles with at least 1 search term selected. Selects articles containing the search term recruitment that do not contain the search term selection. Searches normally use a combination of search terms linked using Boolean logic. These are known as search strings and enable you to combine, limit, or widen the variety of items found using linked terms, Table 3.3. Initially, it may be useful also to limit your search to peer-reviewed journal articles for which the full text is available. It may also be valuable to narrow your search to specific years, especially if you are finding a wealth of items and need to concentrate on the most up-to-date. By contrast, searching by author allows you to broaden your search to find other work by known researchers in your area. There are, however, problems with searching the full text. In particular, the context of a search term may be inappropriate, leading to retrieval of numerous irrelevant articles and information overload. Fortunately, for most databases you can also search one or more specified fields such as the abstract, author or title. Usually, searching the abstract results in fewer irrelevant articles, although, inevitably, you may not find some relevant ones either. Specifying other fields, for example the author, will be useful if you wish to find articles by a key author in your subject area. Browsing and scanning. Any search will find only some of the relevant literature. You will therefore also need to browse and scan the literature. New publications such as journal articles are unlikely to be indexed immediately in databases, so you will need to be browsing the relevant journals' web pages to gain an idea of their most recent and advanced online content. These early view articles are the final version, except for their volume numbering and pagina tie-in, and are usually made available through the specific journal's website some months ahead of being included in a specific volume/issue. In contrast, scanning, also known as snowballing, Hebel 2021, will involve you going through the reference list of already identified publications to identify references to additional potentially relevant publications, box 3.8. Scanning is sometimes known as going backwards, as it only identifies items that were published earlier. It is particularly important that you browse and scan trade and professional journals, as these are less likely to be covered by the online databases. To make browsing and scanning easier, you should identify when those journals that are the most relevant are published and where POS Bible. Ensure you receive email alerts of their tables of contents, TOCs. Identify those professional journals that are most relevant and regularly browse them. Scan new book reviews in journals and newspapers. Scan publishers' new book catalogs where available. Discuss your research with your project tutor and librarians, who may be aware of other relevant literature. 98. Conducting your literature search. Websites of bookshops such as Hive and Amazon can be searched by author, title, and subject, and may have reviews attached. Some bookseller websites and Google Books have a facility whereby you can view selected pages from the book. However, as when using electronic indexes and abstracts, it is important that you keep full details of the literature you have scanned and browsed, box 3.9. As well as enabling you to outline the method you used for your literature review, it will also help prevent you repeating searches you have already undertaken. General searching. When using other search tools, we recommend you keep full details of the searches you have undertaken, making a note of the search tool used, the precise search undertaken, the date when the search was undertaken, the total number of items retrieved. Search tools, often referred to as search engines, are probably the most important method of online searching for your literature review, as they will enable you to locate most current and up-to-date items. Although normally accessed through home pages, each search tool will have its own address, table 3.4. Search tools can be divided into 4 distinct categories, table 3.4. General search engines, meta search engines, specialized search engines and information gateways, subject directories. Most search engines index every separate document. In contrast, subject directories index only the most important online documents. Therefore, if you are using a clear term to search for an unknown vaguely described document, use a search engine. If you are looking for a document about a particular topic, use a subject directory. Box 3.9. Focus on student research. ing using data assays. Matthew described his research project using the search terms marketing and nonprofit. Unfortunately, he encountered problems when carrying out his search using one of the online databases of full text and abstracts for business, management, and economics journals to which his university subscribed, of which were in trade magazines. Entering the term nonprofit on its own retrieved fewer references. Only 8,000 was unsure how to combine his search terms into search strings to make his search more specific. Yule text versions were not available for many of the most recent items retrieved. After discussing the problem, the librarian showed Matthew how to use the advanced search option of the online database. Using this, Matthew first searched using the terms marketing and nonprofit combined as a search string. This still resulted in over 700 items. When he entered the search term marketing, he retrieved references to over 1,288,000 items, many being highlighted. He then refined his search further by limiting it to the collection of scholarly, peer-reviewed journals. This resulted in over 100 items being 99. Chapter 3 Critically reviewing the literature. 100. Retrieved. He therefore decided to limit his search to the abstract field rather than the full text. This resulted in 2 items being retrieved, some of which, including the first, did not appear relevant to his research. He then copied the references for those items, articles, that appeared relevant onto his smartphone. As Matthew scrolled through these, he noted that some of them had direct links to copies. Box 3.9 Focus on student research continued. ing using data assays. Of the full text stored as a PD file, or many of the others, the librarian informed him that he could access the full text using different online databases. However, he still needed to assess each article's relevance to his research before obtaining full copies. Matthew made a note of the details. Conducting your literature search. Table 3. For selected online search tools and their coverage. AIM Internet Address Aument. General search engines. Bing. Google. Google UK. Specialized search engines. Google Scholar. UK Government. Information gateways. Publishers catalogs homepage. Subject directories. www.bing.com. www.google. www. Access to billions of web pages can link to Facebook. Access to billions of web pages. Read-Edlu optimized to show country results. Searches scholarly literature allowing you to locate and sometimes download the complete document, often from an institutional repository. Searches central and local government websites and government agencies. Searchable links to major publishers' websites, listed alphabetically by country.
একে তো খাবো
Organized by
না
subjects, brands, offers
আরো
numerous guides.
দিলা তারপরে আবার শ্যামাই দিলা
General search engines
তারপরে
such as
আবার
Google and
এইটা
Bing normally
দিলা
use search terms and Boolean logic,
এত
table
মুখ দেওয়ার
3.3, or a
কারণ
phrase.
কি
Each search engine indexes and searches automatically, usually finding a very large number of sites, box 3.10. As people have not evaluated these sites, many are inappropriate or unreliable. As no two general search engines search in
আগে
precisely the same
ঝাল
way, it
খাবার
is advisable
খেয়ে
and often
তারপরে
necessary to
মিষ্টি
use more than
দিলা
one. In
তোমার
contrast,
দিলা
meta search engines allow you to
তা
search
না
using a selection of search engines at
আগে
the same time,
হচ্ছে
using the same
মিষ্টি
interface.
ঝাল খায়
This makes
উল্টা
searching easier
করলা
and the search can be faster.
মিষ্টি খাবার আগে দিলা
Unfortunately, it is less
তারপরে
easy
ঝাল
to control
খাবার
the sites that
দিলা
are retrieved. Consequently, meta search engines often generate more inappropriate or unreliable sites than general search engines. Specialized search engines
তোমার
cater for
যদি
specific
ভাত
subject areas.
টেস্ট করার
For
দরকার
example, Google Scholar
তাহলে তুমি ডাস্টবিনে ফালায়া দাও
searches scholarly literature across many disciplines using sources such as articles, SES, books and abstracts from academic publishers, professional bodies, universities, and
শোনো
websites, allowing you to locate the complete
জিনিসটা এরকম
documents.
না
Documents
আমি
are subsequently ranked on a
বলতেছি
combination of
একটা
factors including how
দেখো
often it has been cited, where it was published, and by
আমি
whom it was written.
বলতেছি
A particular
এত
use are
কি
two links,
খাওয়া
the cited by
যায়
link to more recently published articles which have referenced this document, and the direct link to open access articles stored on institutional repositories and on social networking.
তুমি খাও
101. Chapter 3 Critically Reviewing the Literature. Sites discussed next. To use specialized search engines, it is necessary to define your general subject area prior to your search. Information gateways also require you to define your subject area.
তুমি খাওয়া
Information gateways are
আমি
often compiled by
তালি
staff from
করি নাই
departments in academic
আমি
institutions.
খেতে
Although the number of
এতটুকু
websites obtained is fewer, it can be far more relevant as each site is evaluated prior to being
আছে
added to the gateway.
ও
Subject directories are searchable catalogs of sites collected and organized by humans.
এভাবে
The sites are
খাবার
categorized into
খাওয়াইলে
subject
মোটা
areas and are
বানায়
useful for searching for.
সবগুলোকে আমি
Box
তো খেয়াল
3.10.
করি। এই
Focus on
কাহিনী
students.
করতেছে।
Box 3.10.
হুম,
Focus on student. Research. Undertaking an online search using a specialist search engine. ICE research question was reasonably defined, if somewhat broad. She wanted to look at the impact of pandemics, in particular COVID-1, on tourism. As part of her search strategy, she decided, alongside the ACA-demic databases of business and management journals, to search the internet using a specialized search engine, Google Scholar. A first search term, pandemic tourism, revealed that there were over 18,700
দেখো
scholarly publications and displayed the first few. Of these, the first appeared to be potentially useful as it focused on the disruption caused by COVID-1, comparing this to previous epidemics and pandemics. I clicked on the PD link and as it was an open access article was able to download it without charge from the publisher's website. She then returned to Google Scholar and clicked on cited by 822. The first screen revealed a few of the 822 publications that had cited the paper since it had been published. As many could be downloaded as PDF files, she downloaded and saved those publications that seemed relevant on her smartphone. Kay then made a note of the authors listed on the page so she could search for them using her university's online databases. 102. Conducting your literature search. Broad topics. As people normally compile them, their content has been partly censored and evaluated. Consequently, the number of sites retrieved is fewer, but they usually provide material that is more appropriate. Table 3.4. Institutional repositories and social networking. Platforms. Many universities now expect their academics to deposit digital full-text copies of their publications, particularly journal articles, in their institutional repository. This is an open-access collection of the university staff's research outputs from which full-text items can be downloaded. Increasingly, academics, including Mark, are also uploading pre-publication copies of their journal articles, book chapters, and conference papers to social network ing platforms such as academia.edu and ResearchGate. Providing you know the author's name and their university, and the publication has been uploaded, you can often access pre-publication versions through these resources free of charge. Such institutional repositories and social networking sites are useful if your university does not subscribe to the online database of full-text articles in which their publications are stored, particularly.
তুমি দুষ্টুমি করছো না তুমি ইচ্ছা করে হচ্ছে বেশি বেশি করে খাওয়াচ্ছ মোটা বানায়
As uploaded copies can often be found using specialized search engines such as Google. Scholar, Table 3.4, Box 3.10. Obtaining the literature. As outlined earlier, searches using online databases, Table 3.2, and Search Tools, Table 3.4, will provide you with details of what literature is available and where to locate it, in many cases providing a hyperlink to an electronic copy. We emphasize again, you should, whenever possible, download the electronic copy in PDF format and save it on your USB storage device or smartphone. However, where there is no hyperlink, the next stage, Figure 3.1, is to obtain the remaining items. To do this, you need to 1. Check your library online catalog or single search interface to find out whether you can access the appropriate publication. 2. For those publications that can be accessed through your library, note the location and find the publication and scan it to discover whether it is likely to be worth reading thoroughly. For articles, it is often possible to make a reasonable assessment of their utility using the abstract box 3.11. 3. For those items not accessible through your library, it may still be possible to obtain them online, either through institutional repositories or, for books that are no longer copyright, through Google Books. For alternatively, you may be able to borrow the item from another library using the interlibrary loan service. This is not a free service, so make sure it is not available from any other source, and you really need it. Or 2. Visit a library where they are held as reference-only copies. The British Library in London, for example, has one of the most extensive collection of books, journals, market research reports, trade literature, company annual reports, research reports, doctoral theses, and conference proceedings in the world. 103. Chapter 3 Critically Reviewing the Literature. 104. Box 3.11. Focus on student. Research. Assessing TE utility of an article using TE Extract. Anna's research project was about how companies collaborate with each other. In a search using the Emerald Insight online database, she had found a peer-reviewed article in the European Journal of Training and Development by Darabi, Saunders and Clark, 2020, that she considered might be useful. She decided to read the abstract online to check. The abstract revealed that the purpose of the RDCLE was to explore trust initiation and development in collaborations between universities and small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. More details regarding ING this were given in the findings section of the abstract, emphasizing the focus of the paper on trust and engaged scholarship. The design methodology approach indicated that the research had been undertaken with 1 SMEs and 12 university stakeholders, qualitative data being collected using semi-structured interviews. Subsequent sections emphasized further the focus on engaged scholarship and trust. Jana wondered if engaged scholarship might be a good aspect to focus on in her research. Based on this information, Jana decided the article was potentially useful for her research project, so she downloaded it and saved an electronic copy in PDF format. Source: Darabi et al. 2020. Copyright 2020 Emerald Group Publishing. https://www.emerald.com/insight/content DOI 10.11 08 ETD 0-2020-008 full skip tracking true. Reproduced by permission of the publisher. Reading critically and evaluating the literature. 3.7 Reading critically and evaluating the literature. Adopting a critical perspective in your reading. Harvard College Library, 2020, provides its students with a useful list of strategies thinking intensive reading. These include previewing, developing a set of expectations about the scope and aim of the item before you start reading in detail to establish how it may inform your literature search. Annotating, conducting a dialogue with yourself, the author and the issues and ideas at stake and marking those aspects that seem important in the margins of the text using words and phrases rather than just highlighting or underlining. This is crucial as a reason for highlighting in a bright color is often difficult to remember later without notes as to why. Outlining, summarizing and analyzing. The best way to determine that you've really got the point is to be able to state it in your own words. Outlining the argument of an item is a version of annotating and can be done quite informally in the margins of the text. Summarizing does the same thing, making the connections between ideas explicit. Analyzing incorporates an evaluation to your summary. Analyzing comprises your reflect tie-ins on the effectiveness or otherwise of the arguments made. Looking for repetitions and patterns, using these, alongside the way authors use long gauge, to indicate what is important. Contextualizing, looking at what you have read and acknowledging how it is framed by other work. Comparing and contrasting, asking yourself how your thinking has been altered by this reading, and how it has affected your response to the issues and themes you have already considered. Wallace and Ray, 2016, recommend the use of review questions. These are specific questions you ask when reading, which will be linked either directly or indirectly to your research question. So you may, for example, address a piece of reading with a view to it answering the question, what does research suggest are the main reasons why customers are likely to change car insurance provider? The word critical has appeared in this chapter a number of times so far. It is vital in your reading of the literature that a critical stance should be taken. So what is meant by critical reading? Wallace and Ray, 2016, 8, sum this up rather succinctly by saying that critical skills can be boiled down to the capacity to evaluate what you read, and the capacity to relate what you read to other information. More specifically, Wallace and Ray, 2016, advocate the use of 5 critical questions to employ in critical reading. These are 1. Why am I reading this? The authors argue that this is where the review question is particularly valuable. It acts as a focusing device and ensures that you stick to the purpose of the reading, and do not get sidetracked too much by the author's agenda. 2. What is the author trying to do in writing this? The answer to this may assist you in deciding how valuable the writing may be for your purposes. 3. What is the writer saying that is relevant to what I want to find out? 4. How convincing is what the author is saying? In particular, is the argument based on a conclusion which is justified by the evidence? 5. What use can I make of the reading? 105. Chapter 3 Critically reviewing the literature. Evaluating the literature. A question frequently asked by our students is, how do I know what I'm reading is relevant? 2 further questions often asked by our students are, how do I assess the credibility of what I read, and how do I know when I've read enough? All of these are concerned with the process of evaluation. They involve defining the scope of your review and assessing the relevance and credibility of the items that you have obtained in helping you to answer your research questions and meet your objectives. Assessing relevance. Assessing the relevance of the literature you have collected to your research depends on your research questions and objectives. Remember that you are looking for relevance, not critically assessing the ideas contained within. When doing this, it helps to have thought about and made a note of the criteria for inclusion and exclusion prior to assess each item of literature. Box 3.11 also provides some help here. You should, of course, try to read all the literature that is most closely related to your research questions and objectives. For some research questions, particularly for new research areas, there is unlikely to be much closely related literature, and so you will have to review more broadly. For research questions where research has been going on for some years, you may be able to focus on more closely related literature. Remember to make notes about the relevance and credibility of each item as you read it and the reasons why you came to your conclusion. You may need to include your evaluation as part of your critical review. Assessing credibility. Assessing the credibility of the literature you have collected is concerned with the quality of the research that has been undertaken. As such, it is concerned with issues such as methodological rigor, theory robustness, and the quality of the reasoning or arguments. For example, you need to beware of managerial autobiographies, where a successful entrepreneur's or managing director's work experiences are presented as a way to achieve boosting success, Fisher 2010, and articles in trade magazines. The knowledge presented in such books and articles may well be subjective rather than based upon systematic research. For refereed journal articles and some book chapters, the review process means that peers have assessed the quality of research and suggested amendments before they are published. This means the research is likely to have been undertaken with methodological rigor, have used theory appropriately, and been argued cogently. However, it is still important to assess the value yourself in terms of possible bias, methodological omissions, and precision. Box 3.12. It is worth noting that, within business and management and other subjects, lists exist that rank peer-reviewed journals according to their quality, higher rankings indicating better quality journals. The fortunes of academics and their business schools depend on publishing in such highly ranked journals. Harzing, 2020, provides a regularly updated journal quality list for business and management, which includes lists from 12 different sources. While there is little doubt that journals ranked highly on lists are quality journals, and are more likely to contain quality articles, this does not mean that every single paper within them will be of the same high quality. It also does not mean that articles in lower-ranked journals are of little value. Consequently, although journal ranking lists can prove a broad indicator of the quality of research, they are not a substitute for reading the article and making your own assessment of the quality of the research in relation to your research questions and objectives. The checklist in box 3.12 will help in this assessment. 106. OTA, ing, and referencing. Box 3.12. Checklist. Evaluating the relevance, value, and sufficiency of literature to your research. Relevance. Heavy checkmark. How recent is the item? Heavy checkmark. Is the item likely to have been superseded? Heavy checkmark. Are the research questions or objectives sufficiently close to your own to make it relevant to your own research? Heavy checkmark. Is the context sufficiently different to make it marginal to your research questions and objectives? Heavy checkmark. Have you seen references to this item or its author in other items that were useful? Heavy checkmark. Does the item support or contradict your arguments, or either it will probably be worth reading? Credibility. Heavy checkmark. Has the item been subject to a reviewing process prior to publication? Assessing sufficiency. Heavy checkmark. Does the item appear to be biased or example? Does it use an illogical argument, emotionally toned words, or appear to choose only those cases that support the point being made? Even if it may still be relevant to your critical review. Heavy checkmark. What are the methodological omissions within the work, e.g. sample selection, data collection, data analysis? Even if there are many, it still may be of relevance. Heavy checkmark. Is the precision sufficient? Even if it is imprecise, it may be the only item you can find and so still of relevance. Heavy checkmark. Does the item provide guidance for future research? Efficiency. Heavy checkmark. As I read new items, do I recognize the authors and the ideas from other items? I have already read heavy checkmark. Ave, I read the work by those acknowledged by others as key researchers in my research area. Heavy checkmark. Can I critically discuss the academic context of my research with confidence? Heavy checkmark. Have I read sufficient items to satisfy the assessment criteria for my project report? Sources: Authors Experience, Bell and Waters, 2018, Colquitt, 2013, Fisher, 2010, Jankowicz, 2005. Your assessment of whether you have read a sufficient amount is even more complex. It is impossible to read everything, as you would never start to write your critical review, let alone your project report. Yet you need to be sure that your critical review discusses relevant research that has already been undertaken, and that you have positioned your research project in the wider context, citing the main writers in the field, section 3.2. One clue that you have achieved this is when further searches provide mainly references to items you have already read, box 3.12. You also need to check what constitutes an acceptable amount of reading, in terms of both quality and quantity, with your project tutor. 3.8 Note-taking and referencing. The literature search, as you will now be aware, is a vital part of your research project, in which you will invest a great deal of time and effort. As you read each item, you need to ask yourself how it contributes to your research questions and objectives, and to make notes with this focus. Bell and Waters, 2018. When doing this, many students download 107. Chapter 3, critically reviewing the literature, and save copies of articles or photocopy or scan pages from books to ensure that they have all the material. We believe that, even if you save, print, or photocopy, you still need to make notes. The process of note-making will help you to think through the ideas in the literature in relation to your research. When making your notes, make sure you always use quotation marks and note the page number if you are copying the text exactly. This will ensure you know it is a direct quotation when you begin to write your project report, and so help you avoid committing plagiarism. Section 3.11. The Harvard College Library, 2020, suggests that you should get into the habit of hearing yourself ask questions of your reading and make notes as you read. Their advice is summarized in box 3.13. In addition to making notes, it is helpful to record the bibliographic details, brief summary of content, supplementary information. Bibliographic software such as Reference Manager, EndNote, or research tools such as Mendeley or Zotero provide a powerful and flexible method for recording the literature and automatically generating references in the required style, and for some, can send suggestions for further reading based on the references you have uploaded. In addition, there are online bibliography generators such as CiteThis4me that can help you create a bibliography or reference list in the prescribed format. Many specialist search engines, such as Google Scholar, allow references, and in some cases full text, to be exported directly into such software and tools. Where this is not the case, recording can seem very tedious, but it must be done. We have seen many students frantically repeating searches for items that are crucial to their research because they failed to record all the necessary details in their database of references. Box 3.13. Checklist. Making notes when reading. Heavy checkmark. Don't use a highlighter pen. Highlighting can actually distract from the business of learning and dilute your comprehension. It only seems like an active reading strategy. In actual fact, it can lull you into a dangerous passivity. Heavy checkmark. Mark up the margins of the text with words, ideas that occur to you, notes about things that seem important to you, reminders of how issues in a text may connect with your research questions and objectives. If you are reading a PDF copy on screen, use the sticky notes feature of Adobe Reader. This kind of interaction keeps you conscious of the reason you are reading. Throughout your research, these annotations will be useful memory triggers. Heavy checkmark. Develop your own symbol system asterisk a key idea, for example, or use an exclamation mark for anything that is surprising, absurd, bizarre, etc. Like your margin words, your symbols can help your thoughts when you first read it. They will be indispensable when you return to a publication later in the term, in search of a particular passage that you may want to refer to in your project report. Heavy checkmark. Get in the habit of hearing yourself ask questions. What does this mean? Why is she or he drawing the conclusion? Write the questions down, in your margins, at the beginning or end of the reading, in a notebook or elsewhere. They are reminders of the unfinished business you still have with the text to come to terms with on your own, once you've had a chance to digest the material further or have done further reading. 108. OTA, ing, and referencing. Bibliographic details. For some project reports you will be required to include a bibliography. Convention dictates that this should include all the relevant items you consulted for your project, include ing, those not directly referred to in the text. For the majority, you will be asked to include only a list of references for those items referred to directly in the text. The bibliographic details contained in both need to be sufficient to enable readers to find the original items. These details are summarized in Table 3.5. If you located the item online, you need to record the full internet address of the resource and the date you access the information, Appendix 1. This address is the URL, the unique resource location, or universal/uniform resource locator. For a journal article accessed online and some other electronic documents, it is becoming more usual to also include the document's digital object identifier, DOI. The DOI provides a permanent and unique two-part identifier for the electronic document. Most universities have a preferred referencing style that you must use in your project report. This will normally be prescribed in your assessment criteria. 3 of the most common styles are the Harvard system, a version of which we have used in this book, the American Psychological Association, APA, system, and the Vancouver or footnote system. Guidelines on using these are given in Appendix 1. Brief summary of content. A brief summary of the content of each item in your reference database will help you to locate the relevant items and facilitate reference to your notes and photocopies. This can be done by annotating each record with the search terms used to help locate the items and the abstract. It will also help you to maintain consistency in your searches. Supplementary information. As well as recording the details discussed earlier, other information may also be worth recording. These items can be anything you feel will be of value. In Table 3.6 we outline those that we have found most useful. Table 3.5 Bibliographic details required. Journal book author in an edited OO. Author's family name, first name, initials, year of publication, in parentheses, title of article, title of journal, italicized, volume, part / issue, page numbers preceded by PR page or PP for pages. Author's family name, first name initials year of publication, in parentheses, title and subtitle of book, italicized, DILUIR place of publication publisher. Author's family name, first name initials year of publication, in parentheses, title of chapter authors of book family name, first name initials title and subtitle of book, italicized, DILUIR place of publication publisher. 109. Chapter 3 Critic. Table 3.6 Supplementary information. Information reason. ISBN. Class number, e.g. Dewey Decimal. Quotations. Where it was found. The search engine, database or other resource used to locate it. LIECE. When the item was consulted. File name. The identifier for any book, and useful if the book has to be requested on interlibrary loan. The digital object identifier is both permanent and unique, meaning an electronic document can be found more easily. Useful to locate print copies of books in your university's library, and as a pointer to finding other books on the same subject. Always note useful quotations in full, and with the page number of the quote. If possible, also save entire document as a PDF file. Noting where you found the item is useful, especially if it is not in your university. Useful to help identify possible resources for your personal notes on the value of the item to your research. PSI LIEP or REDI internet as these may disappear without trace. E. Useful if you have saved the document,